Welcome to the Young Musician Matters podcast, episode 1. Hi, I'm Paul Denegri, and most people know me as Mr. D, which is quite good actually, because if you've got a name like Denegri, it takes a lot of time to say. And, you know, if you had all those Denegris up, I have to say it, probably about 6 months of my life has gone. So by the time I get to 80, so everybody knows me, Mr. D, and it also saves people going, Mr. Denegri, Mr. Ergened, Denegri, Mr. Denegri, all this sort of stuff. Just Mr. D, and it's stuck with me 35 years. You know, some people I taught in 1986, 87, or 90, I bump into them, they still call me Mr. D, and they're in their 40s and nearly 50. So it's just kind of stuck. So it's Mr. D. Now, look, this is my space, and I've been a professional musician for about 35 years. And that's playing the trumpet, it's writing, it's, conducting, adjudicating, writing rock musicals, lyricist, trying to play a bit of guitar badly, trying to be Van Halen, but Eddie Van Halen, no, it's never going to happen. But it all happens in this little space here. And, you know, everybody needs their space. This is what I think. Everybody, you know, if you're into woodwork, you know, you need your little space, don't you? You need your space where you kind of get your chisels and it's all hung up and all your line, you've got all the shavings and you're doing your carving and all this sort of stuff. And if you're into flower arranging, you want your little shed and your trays and your seeds, and you can talk to your plants and everybody thinks you're weird because nobody can hear you, you know, and look at me, this is a bit weird. I'm talking to a camera on my own, but I'm at the bottom of the garden, so it's okay. And everything happens in this room, you know, I do all the stuff, practice or write or listen or read, eat, drink. I think the only thing I haven't done in here is sleep, actually. I don't think I've ever slept the night in here, but it's a bit small. But basically, this is my little den, and I'm based down in South Somerset. And if you're watching outside the UK, South Somerset is down the southwest corner of the United Kingdom, near a town, very near a town I am, called Yeovil. And which is great for me because I'm 20 minutes from the Yeovil Town Football Club home ground, called Hewish Park, or I call it Holy Hewish. Being a massive Yeovil Town season ticket holder for the last 25, 30 years, 20 minutes from the ground, it's great. And I was there yesterday and we beat Halifax in a mighty win, 1-0. Another classic non-league English football game, 11 men kicking 11 men is great. And 2,000 nutty South Somerset people watching. So that was great. And it was good because the last game we were absolutely abominable. So I'm down in South Somerset now, and this is where it's all coming from. So I'm not in a big city. I'm not in London. I'm not in Birmingham. It's just kind of, I've been able to build my musical career. I've always earned my money from music for 35 years. I'm really, really lucky. I've never had to do anything else to earn money, except once, actually. I've just remembered this. Once, you know, when I was at a specialist music school at Wells, about my 3rd or 4th year, I was quite short of money at Christmas. So somebody said to me, hey, Paul, do you want to earn a bit of cash? And you can put all the light bulbs in the Christmas decorations in the high street in Wells, which is a really old city. And so I was up this ladder at 2 or 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when there's hardly any traffic, screwing coloured light bulbs in the Christmas decorations as head of brass at Wells Cathedral School I was at the time. And I was wearing a Bon Jovi t-shirt, ripped jeans, old pumps, and I was and thinking nobody will see me. And then I went into school the next day, you know, in my suit and looking all kind of Paul Denegri and head of brass at Wells Cathedral School. And I bumped into the headmaster in the dining room. He said, oh, Paul, I saw you last night. Did you have a good night last night? And I sort of, yeah, it was great. You know, I did a lot of practice and I got a lot of work done. So I've got, you know, he said, that's funny. He said, I drove through Wells at 3 o'clock in the morning and I saw you up a ladder in a Bon Jovi t-shirt, screwing light bulbs in. And I was well embarrassed. So that's the only time that I think I've ever had to earn money since I was about 21, not from music. So it's been really, really lucky. So that's me. This is where I'm coming from. Now, look, the Young Musician Matters podcast. What's it all about? Well, this is a podcast. It does what it says on the tin, really, which is for young musicians. Now, what is young? Young is 10, 15, 21, 22. Could be any of those things. In actual fact, I'm 59. It's good for me as well. We're all young at heart. We've all got a bit of young. If even we're 95, we'll have a bit of young in us. So although it's a Young Musicians Matters podcast, you know, it's just anything to do. And it doesn't really matter if you want to be a musician as a career, or you do it as a hobby, or you just kind of sort of do a little bit here for the local brass band, or you just listen and you just love listening to music, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what genre. This is going to be about stuff that cuts right across classical, jazz, rock and pop, you name it. It's what I am. You know, I'm not just a classical musician, but classically trained. So it could be that. And it's going to be little episodes of me having a little chat about something. And then it's also going to be about getting some guest artists that I've met over the years, having done 35 years of the business. Oh, I hate that word, but the business. And I'm going to get people in. And, you know, for instance, you know, it's like if I could get John Bon Jovi in, get John Bon Jovi come to my door here in South Somerset. First of all, I'd be jelly on the floor. And I'd be, it'd take me about 10 minutes to recover because he's a big hero of mine. And I'd like, you know, what, it's like, oh my gosh, it's John Bon Jovi, I wouldn't be able to speak. But once I've recovered and they put the oxygen mask on me and I've got myself together, those interviews that I do with people as part of this podcast is going to be about their young lives only. We might, talk a little bit, but up until they're about 22, because that's what really fascinates me. I want to know how they got into music, what records they listened to, what artists they like, was their boyfriend or girlfriend, were they into music, did they write the first love song for their boyfriend or girlfriend, all that stuff. That's the great stuff. And people on interviews on TV and radio, they sort of go through it a little bit, but it's just brushed over. I want to get into detail about their lives as young musicians. When they start talking about, I've sold EAG, I sold 85 million records doing Living on a Prayer or whatever, I'm not interested. Yeah, we know you did that, John. It's great. But what did he have? What pizza did he have? When you met Richie Sambora in the Pizza Hut, how did you two get together? And so it's going to be about young musicians, their lives as young musicians. And I think that will tell us a lot about them as adult musicians, because it's all about foundations. So that's what the podcast is about. Now, if I'm on my own, we're going to dive into a thing called the Mr. D Tombola, which is actually not a tombola. It's that basket over there. Okay, see that there? So that basket, as I go think of ideas, I put in a bit of paper, write it down, chuck it in there. And I'm here in all hours of the morning. Sometimes I was in here the other day until 3:45 in the morning, writing a script. So I'm in here a lot, and I just think, oh, that's a nice idea, bung it in there. That's a nice idea, bung it. That's not so good idea, but I'll bung it in there. And then I'm going to just take a piece of paper out of the Mr. D's Tombola basket, and I'll do something on that. So earlier this afternoon, I drew out a bit of paper, and it said this, audience. And anybody that knows me, my signature, which is the stick trumpet. Yeah, I just added a smiley face because it's episode 1. And so today, the little podcast, episode 1, is about audience. Now it begins with letter A. That's completely fluky, all right? I didn't plan that A1. I didn't do it. It's just the way it came out. So audience, and it's interesting about audiences, because I actually think they are the most important thing, actually. And I never used to think like that, but the older I've got, I kind of get it. Because if you think about it, if there is no audience, if nobody listens, if nobody downloads, if nobody goes to the theatre, if nobody goes to the box office at the festival, if nobody goes on Ticketmaster to buy a ticket, I'm going to see a band called Wild Hearts on Monday. If I had bought my £25 ticket to go and see them at the Cheese and Grain in Frome, they wouldn't be playing. If there were musicians, we wouldn't earn a living, we wouldn't be out there, nothing would be happening. I'd be just stuck in South Somerset playing the trumpet in this little room, tiny little room, let alone 35 years. I wouldn't last 35 weeks doing that. I'd be bored out of my brain. It's about getting to that performance and performing and entertaining and all the kind of things that do this. You play well, you don't play so well, you play great, and sometimes you're terrible. It's that kind of whoa journey. So to performance that kind of keeps you hungry and keeps productive for me. So without audiences, we have nothing. There is no business. If you think about it, you just take away any listening, and musicians, it's all over. No recordings, nothing. So audiences are really important. Now, I was, for 35 years, I worked at a specialist music school up the road called Wells, and everybody knows that. And I was head of brass for most of that time, but also I was head of rock and pop, and I was head of jazz. And I ran the woodwind department for 3 times, I think, between heads of woodwind. I was actually head of percussion, can you believe that, for 4 years when I first started. The old thing of brass and percussion bolted together. What's that all about? They're completely different. And one of the first things I did was stop being head of percussion. It's like, I don't even know, how to tune a timpani. Why should I be head of it? So, but towards the end of my time there, the last 3 years, 4 years, I think I was made head of student music performance. In other words, all music performances, which is about 300 concerts a year. So I would be in charge of the running and everything and the quality and everything to do with them. And so, and that's quite big. You know, I used to go to 90% of those. And with all my other gigs on my own playing and everything outside of Wales, I mean, I spent most of the time every night at a concert, in a concert hall or in a theatre or in a rehearsal or something like that. It was bonkers. So that is where I was. I've come into this new freelance life now. But for 35 years, that's what I did. And so I took the pupils, I used to take them everywhere. We went to San Francisco, we went, you know, we went to, I think we did a European tour, went to Malaysia, South Africa. I've been all over the shop with them, but all over the UK as well as being based. And I took a bunch of 10 brass players down to Cornwall, which is about 3 hours from here. It's like right down the bottom of the Penzance, and it's about 3 hours, you know, in a school minibus in 1990. And I tell you, it was like the seats had padding that big, not like modern day minibuses, like headrests and everything. These were really rickety old minibuses. And so I took them down there. I managed to get a gig down in Penzance for them. And I thought, we're really good. We'll go down there and we'll do that gig. And when we got to the venue, it was fab. You know, often you get to a venue, you go, oh gosh, you know, no changing room, we've got to change in the toilet, the piano's out of tune, there's no posters up, there's nobody here, there's nothing to eat, it's Sunday, it's raining. It's just like, usually it's like that. We got there and it was a fab venue. I mean, it's really good. And it had a proper piano, and it had dressing rooms and for boys and girls, separate toilets, wow, kitchen. It was fab, and beautifully laid out chairs, great. And we were all very excited, travel 3 hours, that was great. And so, but we got to about 5 minutes before the concert. I looked at the stage and there was only 6 people in there. So I went backstage to the guys and said, look, there's only 6 people in the audience and you're 10. If I go out and makes a 7, it doesn't even make us get anywhere near 10. And the kids were really deflated. They were like, oh, really? Is this, oh, Mr. D, this isn't worth it. What's the point of coming all this way? Anyway, at that time, I just let it go. I said, look, you guys, you just got to get out there and you got to play. And you do the gig. It doesn't matter whether it's 60, 6 million, doesn't matter. You just go out there and you do it the best you can do it for those people. And it went very well. And it was, you do your big ending of brass, and just, it's a little bit soul destroying, but you do the gig. And they did it really well, actually. They did do it all properly. And they dressed up and they did the whole thing. So going back on the minibus, the kids started to sort of say to me, look, Mr. D, what is the point of that? We go all this way for 6 people. And I said, look, you don't know what an audience does to come and hear you play. Every member of an audience, whether it's 6, 60, 600, 6,000, 6 million, 6 billion, doesn't matter. Every single person in an audience has given up something to hear you play. That's what they've done. They might have had an invite to Auntie Betty's 70th birthday bash at the Albert Hall. I don't know. And they can't go because they've already said they bought a ticket for this. It might be that they've got the tickets to go and hear Bon Jovi in New York and they can't go. Slightly debatable. I might get on that plane. But basically, you know, and people say they've given up. They say, oh, I can't do this. Or people say, can you come? And they can't go because they're coming to hear you. They've given up something to hear you play and hear music live. So they've given up something. And one of the children in the bus goes, yeah, but what if they haven't given up anything? But what if what if it's a free night? And I said, well, okay, if it's a free night, they paid for it. So they haven't got anything else on that night. Would have paid for it. Okay, so suppose they're 4 of those people from the same family, and they all pay £20 a ticket. That's 80 quid. Then petrol to and from the venue. Say they're kind of locals, another tenner, 90 quid. Buy a burger, a bit of chips, McDonald's on the way home, or Domino's. That's another 50 quid. It's about £100 for a night out to hear you play. They've given up something. Think what it takes. If you to go into Tesco's and earn £100 will take you about 8 hours. So it took them 8 hours earnings. It's a day's work to hear you play. And then they said, well, what if the concert's free? Like, oh God, you're really pushing me here, guys. What if the concert's free? And I said, well, even if the concert's free and they haven't got to pay and they haven't got anything else on that night, the diary's free and nobody's asked them to do anything else, then do you know what? They have given up something, and they've given up something that the people who pay and the people who have given up other things, they've given up their time. They've given up their time, and life is precious. It's one of my favorite songs by the German rock band Scorpions is a song called Life is Too Short. And on the outro, it goes on for quite a bit. There's just 2 lines and it goes, we run because life is too short. We run because life is too short. We run because life is too short. Life is really short for us, and we never know how short, actually. You know, I'm going to go and walk my dog tonight, you know, in about 2 hours, 3 hours, and I might get run over by the combine harvester. You know, that's it. You know, I've got 2 hours, 10 minutes left. You know, we don't know how much of our life is left. So an audience gives up that time. They give up that very precious thing of which we don't know how long we've got to come and hear you play. And so you've got to get it into your minds. I said to them, it doesn't matter whether there's one person or 5 million. It doesn't make the concert any more special that 50,000 people are there, because you don't know if it's one person, what they've given up to be there. And also, it's an emotional thing. They might be coming to hear something that means the world to them. They might be coming just to hear this particular piece because it's their favorite piece, or that it reminds them of their grandma, or do you know what? It's because that piece has an emotional connection to them, because music is emotional. And sometimes we forget all that. We forget that music's emotional to them in the audience. And so they might be coming for it. There's other reasons, but they'll never tell you. You'll be sitting there looking at this audience, and they won't say, they would all come up at the end and go, oh, I came to this concert because of this, I came because of this, and I gave up this and I gave up. But that's all happening. It's all going to happen. They might be coming out to hear a concert because they're really lonely. Who knows? And so that's what it is. And that's why audiences are really, really important, because without them, we've got nothing as musicians. And you know what? They give up so much to hear us. Now people are going to say, oh yeah, but they get a great time and they get entertained. Da, 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 da. Yeah, but that's part of the two-way thing. They don't have to come. It's voluntary. I have to turn up, because if I don't turn up, I can't pay for my baked beans, and I can't pay for my soup, and I can't pay for the rabbit food or whatever. You know, I've got to go out and do performances because I won't get paid. Audiences are voluntary. They don't have to come. They don't want to come. They don't come. You know, well, I can't be bothered. I'll watch the telly. I'll watch Love Island or something. Can't quite see why you would want to do that, but that's what happens. And part of my job at Wells, running the concerts, we used to run a lunchtime concert series, and these were concerts that happened sort of kind of 2 or 3 lunchtimes a week. And I'll never forget, in my last 3 or 4 years, I was kind of trying to be the person that gave the programs out, because I just thought it'd be really nice to speak to the audience, and because they're important. You know, if they don't turn up, I ain't got a concert. So, and nearly every concert, about 90% of concerts, this old man used to shuffle through the entrance hall, and he'd take a program off me and not say anything, just go, oh, thank you, thank you. And he'd shuffle to the chair, and he always sat in the same place, about second row on the right-hand side, second row on the outside. And he was really old. And it took him ages to get from the front door to his seat. You know, I just thought, crikey, you know, that's a heck of even that little bit. And this happened and he'd shuffle out again. You know, he would be the last to leave because it would take him so long. And this fascinated me, because he never came with anybody else, right? It was nobody else with him, just him. And I never saw anybody drop him off. I never saw him talk to anybody. So I decided one day, I'm going to try and find out a bit about this guy. So in he shuffles one day, and he doesn't take a program, which is a bit weird. He just shuffles past me, which is fine. He sits down. And at the end of the concert, he's the last one out as usual. And I said, oh, you know, did you enjoy the concert? He said, oh yeah, I really enjoyed it. Absolutely loved it. And I said, oh, are you local? And he said, yeah. I walked down. He said, I walked down from St. Thomas's Street, the top of St. Thomas's Street. But at Wells, it would take you about 4 minutes. It would take me about 4 or 5 minutes to walk down to the concert, if that, to the concert hall where the concert's happen. And he says, it takes me about 40 minutes to walk down the hill to the concert and be here ready for 1:05. He said, that's why I'm always a bit early. And then he said, by the time I walk up the hill, it takes me longer. It takes me an hour, you see. So he says, it's about, you can take the concert for half an hour. It's about 2.5 hours of my day to do that. The effort that took that man to do 2.5 hours to hear these young musicians play, even if he was the only person in the audience, by God, is it worth playing to him? He put that sort of painful effort into it. And I said, oh, do you never come with anybody? And he said, no, I live on my own. You know, my wife died years ago. And I used to teach music in a school. That's what I used to do a long time ago. And he says, this is a lifeline to me. If I didn't do this, I wouldn't see anybody. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't hear any live music. So he said, that's why I come every time. It's my lifeline. It's the couple of times a week. And he said, I can't stand the school holidays because there's no concert. And I can't make that effort to come down. I can't hear these lovely young people play music and come back. And I just thought, there you go. There we go. Do we need anybody else in the audience? Isn't that fantastic that we do that for this man? And just he was leaving. He said, I didn't pick up a program. I said, no, that's okay. I said, I've got a spare one. Do you want it? And he goes, yeah, that'd be great. He's just before he left, he said, I love the programs because the program notes. And we always think, what a waste of time program notes. They're not. He said, I get back up the hill. He said, I make a cup of tea and get a rich tea biscuit. And I sit down and I read the program notes and try and learn as much as I can about the music I've just heard. He said, I don't like to read the program notes when I'm in the audience because I just want to listen. But he said, when I'm home, I want to read it all. And I thought, my God, this guy's about 90 and he's a music teacher, ex-music, and he wants to still learn about music. And I just thought, wow, that's incredible. And then about 3 months later, I never saw him again. Never saw him again. He never came again. And there's no doubt what happened. He died. Now, those concerts in his last time, his last years were amazing. They were his life. That was his life. It was his way out of loneliness. It was his way out of, he probably pretended he was back in classroom teaching music with young people. We don't know what was going on in that mind while he was playing. So that's where the audience is. And that's where he is. And we'll never know what it really did for him. So when the children say to me, or the young people say to me, no, there's only 6 people in the audience, you just don't know what an audience has given up, and you don't know what buttons you're pushing, and you don't know what all sorts of emotions and other things you never thought about that make people's lives. So there you go. I did it. There you go. So that is Audience, episode 1 of the Young Musician Matters podcast, the inaugural one. So I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. Look, chuck stuff at me on the website, come back at me, argue with me, tell me to stop moving around so much on camera, whatever it is. I'm just learning. This is a new thing for me. So anything you want me to talk about, any guests you'd like me to get in, I'll try and get Jon Bon Jovi if I can. Wow. Then let's do it. But I hope you've enjoyed that little podcast about audiences. And it's nice we started off with them, because without them, there aren't no musicians except in our little dens. Be kind to yourself. Bye.